My name is Hope Holland. So I grew up in Humboldt County mostly, but I have actually lived all over the Bay Area, and I've also lived in Arkansas, and I lived in Texas as well. My father died when I was 8 years old. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. That's when I became a mother, actually, or a parent, I should say. I became a parent to my brothers and sisters at that point because my mom went to work around the clock. Then suddenly we moved to Arkansas. Kind of a strange place to go move to. My mom had a sister there, and so we moved to Arkansas out of the blue. And actually, if there was a time in my life that I got to be a child, I would say that it was during that time. So at 12 I started school in California again and came back to Northern California. We moved to a remote area of California because my uncle lived in this place. And unfortunately, at 12 years old, I emancipated, I moved out at 12. Because my home life was too traumatic. My uncle was a heroin addict. Italian mafia killed my uncle, murdered my uncle. And next thing you know, they were going to murder me and my sister and my mother. And stuff started like coming into my life that was not my life. My goal was to do well in school so I could go to college. That was my only focus. So it was pretty devastating to have to leave at that point. I had a boyfriend that I had met from down in the Bay Area that I had been dating from a very young age as well. And so, you know, he and I had been, you know, we corresponded letters and things like that, and I spent my summers with him and things like that. But what happened was when I got to Homestead, I just couldn't handle it. I was suddenly surrounded like by all these little girls. Like for me, it felt like I was surrounded by these little girls that were talking like almost Barbie talk, you know. And I just couldn't relate to it. It just felt so. I felt so out of place, and it just like I couldn't handle it. Started having suicidal thoughts at that point, and I decided though that I was going to attempt to go to the adult education class to complete my high school so I could graduate. And suddenly I said, forget about it. I'm just gonna forget about it. I'm not doing anything. And so I started sleeping and thinking about ending my life at that time. And I wouldn't get up anymore and stuff like that. So that was my first really bad bout of depression, I guess. So when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't in acceptance. And so the first 3 years of my diagnosis, I said, okay, I have this diagnosis, but I really don't want it, but I have it. So I'm gonna learn everything I need to learn about it, and I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna handle this myself. I don't need to take medication and all that stuff. So my first 3 years, the first year that after I was diagnosed, I began a day program. And I was the only person in that day program that didn't take medication. And my life was so improving though, despite that. And so I was like, see, look, I'm learning, I'm doing this, I got this. See, you can do this without medication, you know, this is what I thought. But somewhere along the line, about a year and a half or so into that phase, stuff started changing for me on a you know, mental level. I started becoming symptomatic and things, but I didn't know that, of course. But the end road of that 3 years later was a homicidal, suicidal situation, and it was not good. It wasn't pretty. So I first had my own addiction come into the picture too. Before, so I was in recovery myself from substance abuse, and I went into recovery, and I became became a professional in recovery too. And then my real severe break came in my last year, at the end of that recovery, like when I became an assistant house manager and stuff like that. That was when I got diagnosed first. Serious treatment started. Well, my serious diagnosis came from Kaiser originally, but there was more to it than just the first diagnosis, which was the bipolar, because I had OCD really bad then, really bad. And that came later. But, and that was at Momentum, but it was actually called for Alliance for Community Care at that time. And that's when that's when my road to recovery started. Well, you know, it wasn't easy, I can say that. Like, it didn't start off like, oh, perfect, I'm at Momentum and now everything's perfect. It didn't work like that. But I learned to become an advocate for myself, period, growing up in general. I think that started at probably at a young age. And by the time I got to Alliance for Community Care, I had a couple of times that I had to just be an advocate for myself. My son Jonathan, my youngest baby, was kidnapped when he was 3 years old, and like I said, he was born in 1996. My son was born with my last name. He was a U.S. citizen. I brought him into this world by myself because his father didn't want to acknowledge it at that point. And then what happened was his father decided to take me to court, have a paternity test, and when he got the paternity test back, he was like, oh, I'm the dad. This is 3 years later. So I've raised Jonathan already at that point. And so he got, because he had money, I didn't have money, but so he got some, you know, visitation and things like that. And on one of those visitation times, he just never came back. 3 years straight, I was absent as a parent. Like, I had my other son, Jacob, who was there with me, and I raised him and, you know, took care of him. But the reality was I was really not present, because one day, 3 years after Jonathan had been taken, I remember Jacob going, Mom, 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 and then I saw him for the first time. Like, it was like, I was there the whole time, but I saw him for the first time. And that's when I realized, like, I had to close the chapter on the book of, like, looking for Jonathan, because I was so submerged in all that stuff that I wasn't able to take care of myself or my other son, so. So my son, who is gone now, he had been gone that 3 year, remember I said 3 years, I had to close the book and stop looking for him. So at 3 years I stopped looking for him, but I didn't ever stop looking for him. But I started living my life again, that's all. So 15 years later, which I never thought would ever happen, because you don't ever think of 1 year happening, but it did. 15 years later, I stumbled upon a picture that was on Facebook. The Facebook picture, I took a picture of my two boys when Jonathan and him were taking a bath, and I had clicked on a webinar thing and liked their page, and when I clicked on that page, it said, these people like your Facebook page, this Facebook page too. And one of the pictures that showed up was that picture of my sons. And that picture led me to somebody in Los Angeles who went to school with my son, who gave me the phone number to my son. And then I called my son. I had to wait for 3 days before talking to him, but that guy connected me to my son. And then I spoke to my son for the first time in 15 years. I share my story everywhere I go. That's what I do. That's my work I do. I didn't call myself to do the work in the helping field to be in this industry. It chased me down and grabbed me. I didn't choose it. It chose me.